Hello and welcome to my video on how to improve communication in your marriage. If you're struggling to connect with your spouse and find it difficult to communicate, then you're in the right place because in this video, we will explore some common communication mistakes that can harm your relationship and provide you with practical tips and strategies to help you improve your communication skills. Now, as a family attorney and coach, I've worked with hundreds of successful, high-performing fathers who have transformed their relationships by improving their communication skills. In this training, I'll share my secrets to communicating effectively with your spouse and partner, children, friends, and colleagues, so you can build stronger, more fulfilling relationships in your life. So let's dive in and learn how to avoid common communication mistakes and unlock the secrets to building stronger relationships. Now, if you're like many couples, you've probably said at least once, we have problems with communication. We need to learn how to communicate. But here's the thing, communication it's not the problem people make it out to be. Because when you speak to each other, do you understand what the other person is saying? Can you make sense of what is being said, of what their real intention is? Does your spouse understand what you are saying? Now, this is not the same as understanding what you mean. My view is communication is essential, but it's not the only thing that matters, because underneath communication is how you perceive what's going on with your spouse or partner. All communication is a flow of information between two people. The interpretation of what's said happens in each person's head. Completely different things, huh? So the real issue is how we interpret what our loved one says, not whether we're communicating well. To truly communicate effectively, it's about learning how to send and receive not just verbal cues, but to look under the hood of the other person's perception. That said, there are some mistakes that people make when they're trying to communicate, especially with a loved one. Difficulties kick in. So if you're ready to take your communication to the next level, stay tuned as we dive deeper into each of these steps and explore practical strategies to make and help you build stronger, more fulfilling relationships. So communication is a crucial element in any relationship, but it can be really challenging to navigate it. Now, as I see it, there are 5 communication mistakes that men and people in general make repeatedly. Let's explore these mistakes and see how they apply to you. Now, firstly, let's discuss interrogation mode. Now, this occurs when you're listening to the other person, not to understand them, but to gather evidence to support your own preconceived notions. It can turn into a battle of ideas where both parties are talking, but neither is listening. So instead of being open to hearing the other person's perspective, you're more interested in proving them wrong. You're wrong. Interrogation mode is not communication mode. When you're in this type of mode, you ask questions like, why did you do that? Or why do you always say that? Your mind is already made up. It's made up and you're ready with a rebuttal, even as your wife is sharing their thoughts. This mode, it hinders your ability to listen and understand the other person's view. The process of communication is to listen, not necessarily to solve the problem in the heat of the moment. It's essential to recognize that we don't have to see things the same way. Different views can coexist in the same marriage, and we don't have to understand things the same way to be a successful couple, family, or team. It's true. So avoid interrogation mode at all costs. It's designed to show the other person they're wrong and I'm right. It's a bit like the police shows, where they're trying to get to the truth and trip up a suspect in the interrogation room. It's just not healthy. It's not a healthy approach to communication. Remember, you only have control over yourself, not the communication style of the other person. So focus on changing yourself first, really. Create a better path for communication. Okay, number 2, communication evasion. When someone's being indirect, it can feel like they're playing the game of, guess what I'm thinking. And let's be real, nobody likes that game. Try and encourage honest communication by creating a safe space to share thoughts and feelings. And if you find yourself being evasive or indirect, take a moment to reflect on your fears and just deal with them head on. Not to do that is going to cause a problem. Trust me, being straightforward is much less frustrating for everybody involved. Don't fall into the trap of the blame game here. It's not the other person's fault that you're doing this. It's on you. Similarly, if you communicate indirectly or evasively, you can choose not to be indirect. That doesn't mean you're always going to get what you want. Look at the areas in your life where you tend to be indirect. That tells you quite a lot about your fears of being judged. Maybe you find yourself being indirect about money, physical attention, emotional attention, or any sort of difficult issue with your spouse, and so you try and swerve around it, and you expect her to understand what you're hinting at, and that's a recipe for disaster, disappointment, and anger on both sides. I see this all the time in my practice. Hinters always ask after the event, "Why didn't they understand me? Why didn't they get it? They didn't. They just didn't read my mind. They should have known what I meant." It doesn't work that way. Okay, and that kind of segues into the third point, which is the blame game. Now, we've all played this at some point, okay? It's the blame where we point the finger at someone else and say, "It's your fault I feel this way. That's why I feel like this." But the truth is that blame removes all accountability and responsibility from ourselves. It's all about you, not me. And the tone used is usually accusatory. So instead of starting a difficult conversation with, "I'm upset because of you, and I can't believe what you do. Why would you do something like this?" You try and own your feelings, okay? Start with, "Sweetie, could we sit down and talk? I need to talk to you about something that's really hurting me. It's really hurting my feelings." Because when we blame others, we don't share how we feel and we don't give them the opportunity to fail us. We make them responsible. Yes, you're responsible for our feelings, and that's not fair, and it will not work in a marriage. When we do this, the other person shuts down or gets angry, which cuts off the communication connection. Very common situation in marriages. So let's try to avoid the blame game and take self-accountability for our feelings, because this way we give the other person the opportunity to understand us. It gives them a chance to try and fix the problem. It's not about blaming someone else. It's about owning our feelings and communicating effectively. Which leads me to point 4, communication tsunamis. Yes, you can overwhelm people with communication. Creating overwhelm in the conversation is what I call a communication tsunami, where there's a massive overflow of emotions that the other person can't process. It's very common in couples where one partner is so overwhelmed that they can't respond, which is known as flooding. It also happens with children. They may freeze when you're cross with them because they tend to try and escape from how they're feeling. And it makes them shut down. They can't deal with it. They physically want to get out of the space or just shut down the conversation altogether. They may also make inappropriate jokes or just go on the attack as a form of defense. And that causes them shame and anxiety. And, if you notice your partner feeling flooded in the conversation, don't judge them. To deal with someone who's flooded, you need to acknowledge it and say, literally, "Well, look, you're flooded, overwhelmed. We need to stop now and make a plan to revisit this discussion later because it's overwhelming both of us." And discussions between partners tend to end on the same tone that they began with. So if you do a soft startup and ease into the conversation, you're more likely to avoid flooding your wife with those emotions. Say something like, "I'm wanting to talk about, doing the gardening." Ask her, "When do you think would be a good time to talk about it?" Rather than launching into a conversation, "Oh, gardening is just a bloody nightmare. I can't deal with it." That's more likely to make her flooded if you're overwhelmed. It enables both parties to approach the conversation calmly, prevent overwhelming emotions from taking over. And flooding can happen to anyone, including you. So it's crucial to approach difficult conversations with empathy and calm and understanding. Because if you take that lead, you'll avoid flooding. The fifth issue, holding back in communication can be really detrimental to a relationship. It means you're not sharing important information or feelings, and that ultimately starves the relationship of the oxygen it needs. Now, particularly with men, many times men hold back because they want to appear strong and that they can handle life's pressures without their partner's help. And this results in, it creates barriers that prevent the wife from really getting to know them and to make things better and what makes you tick. I've seen cases where holding things back is a way to punish the other person for falling short, but it's it will not work because the person on the receiving end of this behavior may feel that something is off and try and figure out what's wrong. And if the person evading the communication just withholds information, you'll find that the other person will just get obsessed about trying to get them to open up. And that, again, recipe for disaster in relationships, because basically the person who is shut out will shut down and give up. In reality, holding back, it's not a sign of strength, but it's rather a weakness. And it's a fear of being vulnerable and sharing who you are and what you believe. It's very common in men. So it's important to remember that communication is a two-way street, and withholding information is really going to harm the relationship. Being open and honest is not easy. I'm not saying it is, but it leads to a deeper connection and a stronger bond between partners. So what did we learn today, and what are you going to take away from my for my discussion? We covered 5 communication mistakes to avoid, which is interrogation, communication, evasion, the blame game, communication tsunamis, and holding back. And we've discussed how each of these mistakes can harm relationships and lead to miscommunication and failure. So it's important to recognize which of these mistakes you're prone to, and to actively work on improving your communication skills. One or other may apply to you, maybe all 5. And even the best communicators can still struggle with these mistakes. I still do, and I'm a pretty good communicator. But don't make it because of your preconceived ideas, fears, and insecurities. You have to be vulnerable. You have to listen. And so have a look, because we're all imperfect communicators, and there's always room for improvement. It requires active listening, openness, and a willingness to share and connect with your partner or wife. So build stronger connections with that. I hope today's video has been of real use to you. There's lots of tips on this channel. Please subscribe. Let me know in the comments which of these communication fails apply to you or which resonate the best. Reach out to me if you need any help informally, or formally. Down there you can see details of what I do, and feel free to inquire. I'd love to help you and build a nation of happy marriages. Until next time, I look forward to being here for you. And as I say, reach out, and I'll see you in the next one.